What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be changing the brakes on a 2014 E350. All right, so here's all the stuff that I have to get these brakes off. I've got the front replacement pads, the rear replacement pads. I've got this kind of socket set because on the Mercedes, to get the caliper off, you have to use a 7mm hex. So that's what this is. That's what this set's for. If you don't have one, I can put a link in the description for these. These are pretty neat because a lot of normal socket sets don't come with these little adaptions, but that's what we're going to be using, the 7mm to take the caliper off. And of course, got the normal ratchet set just in case I need any other stuff. First, we're going to be taking the tire off. And then we're going to be taking a look at this. There's a specialty clip on Mercedes on the front and the rear. And we have to remove both of those before we can remove the actual caliper. So give me a second. We're going to get this off. So this doesn't shoot off. I got a pair of little vice grips I'm going to hold the top with. You're going to take a big flathead screwdriver and pry right here. And you're going to push this metal piece out of the hole. There's a hole in here that it sits in. And it takes a second just to get it in that spot. And there it goes. Pops it right out. And now we can start the process of removing the caliper. Guys, I want to correct myself real quick. That 7 hex head that I showed you earlier, that's actually for the rear. I forgot that the front is 13mm. So it's just two. One here on top, and then there's another one right there. So these two, you'll back these out, then we'll compress the piston and take off the caliper. All right, what we're gonna do to compress this piston is I've got this big screwdriver. I'm gonna drive it into here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but I'm gonna put it in between one of the pads and the rotor, and I'm gonna work it nice and slow because I don't want to compress it too fast and I don't want to damage anything. So I'm going to go nice and slow and work it until it's loose. Now that you've successfully removed the caliper from the rotor, the outside one, the one that's going to be right here, will just fall out. There's nothing holding that. On these vehicles, the inside ones, you're going to have to pry because they have little holding clips that hold it inside that piston. So that's why when you have your new ones, you should be able to differentiate between the ones that go on the outside and the ones that go on the inside, because these are going to clip into the actual piston. I know I showed you how to remove this, but I'm also going to show you another trick. Before you remove this, this old pad is the perfect pressure contact when you're trying to compress the piston. So I'm going to use my big C-clamp, and I'm going to use that old pad to help push that piston up in there. And then I'll replace the pad, of course, but I just wanted to show you, you can use that old pad for the time being as a tool for you. That way you're not struggling trying to press that piston, because in here, unlike other vehicles, these lines are very, very tight. You know, some are kind of tight and you have limited room, but here in the Mercedes, like, everything is buttoned up so nice and neat that you have very limited room. So that's why I'm actually using the box that the brakes came in to hold the caliper up while I work, because there is not much room and I didn't have anything tall enough to really do the job. So this is actually working perfect. We got the last and final task when putting these on. On the Mercedes, you have a brake sensor. So what you're going to do is there's a little tiny hole right here, and then here's your little clip. You're going to line your sensor up with that hole, lock it in. Take your sensor, it only goes in one way, push it in nice and tight. And then now we just have to put that last retaining clip right here on this side, and the front brake is complete. This last task is probably the most tedious, and the most annoying task. But you've got to get this lined up right about where it was, and then you just want to take your hands and press this on until it clips. Now, it's pretty annoying, I'm not gonna lie, to get it all lined up the way it needs to go in that little hole. But if you just work it, it'll go in there and it's locked in. But it is probably the most annoying part of it, because you'll find there's a little curve on the little lip that hooks in the hole down here, and it takes a little finessing to get it in there. But that's it. Front brakes changed, and now it's on to the rear. Very similar to the front, except this time, instead of it having one pinhole, it has two pinholes. But we're gonna do pretty much the same thing. I'm gonna take the vices to hold it so it doesn't spring off. I'm gonna take my big screwdriver, or you can use a pry bar, and we're gonna work one out at a time. If we can get one out, the second one just pops out. So there's your one. That one's out. I'm gonna pinch down here. This one's being a little difficult on me. It looks like it's a little rusty too. I'm gonna have to probably clean this up. There it is. Yeah, it's a little rusty, so I'm gonna try to clean it up before I put it back in, just to help it slide in there a little bit easier. But that's how you get this rear clip off. Now, and I probably forgot to, I just did it just because I normally do. But here is your tire sensor for the rear, and you're just gonna do like you did on the front. Pop it out, and we're gonna take our pair of needle nose or vise and pop that out nice and gently. You can buy replacements for these. I normally clean these up and keep using them until they decide to fail, because Mercedes likes to charge a lot for these, and typically they haven't failed on me. I normally use them about 2 times, 2 brake changes before I would replace this. But you can do whatever you want. You can order them. They're very simple to replace, but that's why I normally just clean this one up and reuse it probably twice before I replace it. Now for the rear, the front has 13 millimeters, but the rear has those 7 hex heads. So what you have to do is you actually got to get a screwdriver and these little plastic caps, and you just pop this cap off. It goes right here. And then there's one on the bottom as well down here, which exposes this right here where you're going to insert the 7, and I'll allow you to disconnect this caliper. So I'm going to pop these off. I'm going to disconnect this caliper. Just like we did the front, I'm going to leave the inside in. Remember, the left side's just going to drop out, but I'm going to leave the inside in so that I can compress this piston. Once I compress this piston, clean it all up, replace the new ones. Remember, of course, your inside one has a clip, and it does have a little different clip than the front, so you can differentiate the front brakes from the rear. The fronts are going to be bigger than the rear, so just remember that. And also the way they hook. See, in the front they had more of a rounded hook. These have more of a 90, and they just rest in there in that little spot right there, those little indentions. It's very easy. But now I'm going to compress this piston and replace the brakes. To finish up the back, we're going to do just like we did on the front with our sensor all cleaned up. We're going to line it up. You can see that hole a little bit better on this back. But we're going to put it in, make sure it lines up, push it in where it snaps into there. And then we're going to line this up. There's only one way. And boom. There's our sensor. Good to go. One last thing. I need to show you how to put this clip in because it's a little tricky. But you can pretty much almost make it in with a push. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little screwdriver and I'm going to line this up Make sure this little top part is holding on to here, because that's what's going to provide the pressure to clip it in. Hold it with one hand, pry with the other, and just like that, this clip is back in. I appreciate y'all watching. It's hot today, so I'm sorry it took me a little bit longer, but like I said, I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you in the next one.